What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today we are talking about players to potentially avoid for game week 1 in Fantasy Premier League. Now, as always, I would say don't ever write a player off for a whole season. Just because they've done bad for you in the past doesn't mean they're always going to do bad for you, and it's not good to have biases towards certain players. But in my opinion, the 6 players that we're going to talk about today should be avoided for game week 1 for varying reasons, which I'll go into. Of course, what I would encourage you to do is watch the whole video, watch all 6 players, listen to the points that I make, and then leave me a comment below letting you know whether you agree or disagree. And basically, the players have been chosen either because I think they're too highly priced, or their ownership is already kind of above 10%, climbing towards 20%, and I think maybe people have made the wrong choice. But of course, again, all my opinion. Let me know what you think. Let's jump into it. So first up is Nick Pope, and to be honest, I can't sit here and fault his performances from last season. 170 points, the top scoring goalkeeper. I think that was 10 ahead of Dean Henderson, 14 ahead of Cassius Michael. It was a really great season, and I can't even tell you that that price isn't warranted, because I did think he could come in at 5 million, but 5.5 million, given the amount of points he scored, more than Edison, more than Allison last year, who are both 6 million, 5.5 million is probably a fair price for him. But I am still absolutely avoiding him. First of all, it's very rare that expensive goalkeepers are worth it in the long run. Even if you look at someone like Matt Ryan, who's a full £1 million less, last year only scored 35 less points than Nick Pope. Over the course of a season, that's less than 1 point a game. Now, that's still a big return. 35 points could be the difference between top 20k and top 10k or whatever it might be. So you shouldn't turn your nose up at 35 points. But it's not just that. It's also what can you do with that other million. Maybe it lets you go from a Van Dijk to a Trent Alexander-Arnold. Maybe you've got 7.5 million to spend on a forward spot, but having 1 million extra lets you get Jimenez or Ings. These could be big upgrades for 1 million. So it's not just the goalkeeper points you need to worry about, and the fact that very rarely are expensive goalkeepers worth it. Usually, in seasons gone past, most people have done well having a 4.5 or maybe even a 5. I do think this year it's a lot tougher to maybe choose a 4.5 because of the amount of options. But even in the 5 million for 0.5 million less, there's quite a few options. So I'm not surprised that that was an increase in price. I do remember as a Nick Pope owner, by the way, last year, for a large chunk of the season, he wasn't very good, especially for the first half. I had him for a long time and I ended up getting rid of him. It was only then that he started doing really, really well. So one lesson learned, don't switch your goalkeepers too often. It's just not worth it. But the second point is, when we've got to use our wildcard in the first 16 game weeks, I'd rather take the risk that he's not going to do extremely well and get another 15 clean sheets, which is quite a lot, even for Burnley, who are a really good defensive team. I just think 5.5 million means he's an avoid for me from the off. That 1 million can definitely go further than spending it on a goalkeeper, I think. 9.5 million for Roberto Firmino, the Liverpool frontman. Maybe it's a fair price. I mean, at the end of the day, he does play for one of the best teams in the league that do score a lot of goals. He does get quite a few chances, 9 goals, 9 assists last year. But I just cannot get behind him at that price. And like I said, from an FPL point of view, it's probably a fair price. But had they reduced the price a little bit, it might have encouraged a few more people to go for him. Because right now, you've got the likes of Mane, Salah, Trent, Van Dijk, Robertson, that everyone's trying to fit into their team. Not many people are thinking about Firmino, and that's why for 9.5 million, I really do think he's in a void. Now, I get why he's not cheaper, like I said, because Liverpool score a lot of goals. And the one thing I would say in his defence, 18 returns last year was actually the least out of the last 4 seasons. So he got 20 the season before that, 23 before that, and 22 before that. So he can get returns, but at 9.5 million, he's got to beat Werner for the same price. He's got to beat Martial, who's 0.5 million cheaper. There's Ings and Jimenez, who are £1 million cheaper. There's just too many options for me in the forward line to bother putting Firmino in, who's also going to take up a Liverpool space. At some point, maybe not for game week 1, but at some point, we're probably going to want to double and maybe even triple on Liverpool, perhaps double defence plus Salah or Mane, or maybe Salah or Mane plus 1 defender, whatever it might be. That's probably going to be something that a lot of us want to do at some point. So locking ourselves into Firmino just does not feel right. And the other thing, right, he's kind of the opposite of what you want from an FPL player. Selfish players in real life can be frustrating. In FPL, they're great because they shoot a lot. Firmino is the complete opposite. If you had a choice between scoring or passing to Mane or Salah, I know which one he would do. And for Liverpool, that's great. But from an FPL point of view, it's not. I can just imagine him, instead of shooting, on a lot of occasions, he'd dummy the ball if Mane or Salah was behind him and let them score instead. And like I said, that's great for Liverpool. Obviously helped them win the league last year, but from an FPL point of view, it's not what you want to be watching, and that's why he's definitely an avoid for me from the off. John Lundstram, last year's FPL hero, Lord Lundstram as he was known last year, he definitely isn't the king of FPL anymore. What I think's happening here, his ownership's fairly high, high-ish anyway for that kind of price, is everyone's going to midfielders, they're filtering by maybe 6.5 million midfielders or less, and they see that he's the top point scorer from last season with 144 points. If you got to like 7 million, then Grealish slightly beat him, but 6.5 million or less, he's the highest scorer. And a lot of people build their teams off that. Who scored well last year? I'll just go for them and hope that they can do it again. Lundstram is not going to do that. Obviously, the big difference for anyone that played last year, he was listed as a defender. So anytime Sheffield United got a clean sheet, which they got quite a few of, he got extra points for that. That's not going to happen this year. His price has been increased from 4 to 5.5 million. We knew it was going to go up. And now he's only going to rely on his goals and assists. Now, he did get 5 goals, 4 assists last year, so it's not that bad. But most of those points, like I said, came from clean sheets. And when you got the likes of maybe Saka at Arsenal, if he plays in the Community Shield, for example, he could be a really good option, at least for the first couple of weeks. St. Maximin at Newcastle, you got Armstrong at Southampton as well. They're all the same price. Even Souček at 5 million could probably do close to what Lundstram did last year in that West Ham team. Maybe not straight away with the fixtures, but eventually. So, John Lundstram, you were a hero for many. You frustrated me last year, but this year, there's no frustration to be had. He just shouldn't be in our teams. So I feel like I've spoken about Wolves a lot in pre-season already, and there's still a few weeks to go. And I do like a lot of their players, but Boly isn't one of them. As a player in real life, I think he's great. He's one of the cores of the team, extremely reliable and steady in that defence. Really helps out the team. But as we know, sometimes being a really good footballer doesn't translate into being a good FPL option. Now, it's not to say he's bad. I think 5.5 million is probably fair. 12 clean sheets under him last year in under 2,000 minutes. If he played a full season, he would have scored a lot more than 97 points. The problem for me is, and I've mentioned this already, is when Boly plays, they do great, but at 5.5 million, you can get into that defence in cheaper ways. You've got Vinagre at 4.5 million if they don't sign a left back. You've got Saiss at 5 million, who should be just about as nailed as Boly. And that is the caveat, I suppose. When you buy Boly, you know 100% he's not getting rotated. He's going to play as many games as possible. With the likes of Saiss, maybe there's a slight risk of rotation, but I think he showed enough last year that he is first choice. Dendoncker, who did play centre-back for some part of the season last year, was more often than not, towards the end of the season, deployed in midfield, which we've seen him play there before. And he actually got quite a lot into the box as well. But I digress a little bit. Saiss, I still think is a good option for 0.5 million less. So I do like Boly. His points per match were higher than Saiss last year. But you need a bit of context there that Saiss had to play a chunk of the season without Boly. And when Boly came back in, there were a lot more clean sheets. For a lot of the time, he had like 40 to 50% clean sheets for the matches that he played in. So he really did have a great season. I do think Wolves without Europe are definitely a team to look at, but there's particular players I like from them, and we'll see in a second when there's another Wolves player on this list. There's a few I dislike, but like I said, Vinagre if they don't sign a left back, or even Saiss for 0.5 million less. If you really want to go for that Wolves defence, or you try and find 0.5 million from somewhere, maybe it's from downgrading Nick Pope to a 5 or a 4.5, and you just get Doherty instead, who's a much better option for 6 million. So at the time of recording, Bamford has crept over 10% ownership, and at this stage of the season, ownership is not necessarily a huge thing. Some people are just hitting auto-select and leaving their teams until later, but there will be people putting squads together and looking to see what kind of price he was. And 5.5 million, not a bad price, obviously lets you spend money elsewhere. The problem for me is not how good will Leeds do this season. I know a lot of people think they're going to do well. It's how they're going to start the season in terms of fixtures. So Liverpool away, Sheffield United away, Man City at home and Wolves at home in the opening 5 fixtures is not a good run for anyone. If Liverpool or Man City had that kind of run, I'd still start thinking, well, do I need more than one of their players? And when it's Leeds, newly promoted, we're not sure how they're going to do in the Premier League at the moment, I'd probably want to avoid, no matter what you think of Leeds this season and what they can do, that is not a nice fixture run. And even at 0.5 million more, if you can eke out another 0.5 from somewhere else in your squad, I'd probably rather have Mitrovic or maybe even Che Adams as well. I just don't think for 5.5 million, Bamford's worth a look. 16 goals last year, less than Mitrovic. It's not to say he can't score, but he did miss quite a few chances. Now, if he gets those chances again in the league, Premier League of course, then maybe he'll start converting some. And at some point, I'm not saying completely avoid Leeds for the whole season. At some point when their fixtures dry up or get better, I should say, then maybe Bamford will be worth a look. But I would rather see what kind of numbers he's posting, see what kind of chances Leeds can create, how they play, how they adapt to the Premier League, and then maybe look at him. But for a game week 1 squad, Bamford would be nowhere near mine, I don't think. I know, we're talking about Wolves again, and they have got a lot of options I like. I do think some of their defenders, like I've mentioned, are good. I think Jimenez at 8.5 million, he's about as steady as it comes when scoring points. He's done it over the last 2 seasons. I don't see why he wouldn't again. Obviously, they haven't got Europe to contend with either. That should help them this year. But their other attacking options, I'm just not sure. And the main reason, it's not because I don't think they're good players. I think Jota's really good. I think Neto and Podence, when they come in, have looked good. And Traore has definitely improved. I think he's a really good player now. 4 goals, 9 assists. Really good score last year. The problem is, there's just too many question marks over the other attackers. So will Nuno primarily play a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3? Chances are he'll keep switching between the two. If he plays 3-4-3, then there's Neto, Podence, Traore, and Jota playing those wider positions either side of Jimenez. If he plays 3-5-2, we've seen Jota play up front with Jimenez. He's done really well in the past from an FPL point of view. But last season, we also saw Traore play up front in certain games as well. And it might be difficult to know exactly which ones that will happen in. And maybe there'll be a pattern at some point. Maybe it'll be the type of teams that they play against, etc. And I think on some occasions you can get away with a player that's not going to play week in, week out. We've seen Traore come on and get assists before, maybe even get an odd goal or two. But it's not something you want to heavily rely on, especially for a side like Wolves that aren't like Man City. They aren't going to be explosive at will, basically. Maybe Foden will be good because he'll come on at some points and get starts in other games. I don't think that's the same for the likes of Jota or Traore. So if they were all nailed on anyway, I think I would prefer taking the chance that Jota will get back up to kind of the performances, not maybe he had last season, the one before, and I'd actually prefer him over Traore anyway. So Traore's ownership's climbing towards 20%, and if he was absolutely nailed to play every game, I think he'd be a great price, a great player. He'd probably be in my squad, to be honest, in that Wolves side, because the fixtures are so good. And don't get me wrong, I am trying to fit in as many Wolves players as possible, but I just don't think Traore warrants the 20% ownership when it's just too unknown about whether he's going to start week in, week out. So I'll probably be avoiding him, but let me know what you think in the comments below. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I think we've hit like 1,000+ likes on every single video in pre-season so far. The support has been phenomenal. Please do keep it up. If you're not subscribed, which 50% of you watching this video will not be subscribed, just hit that subscribe button. It takes 2 seconds to do. My videos keep coming up on your home screen. You might as well click subscribe and just get it over and done with now. And lastly, if you want some extra content, if you want to join the Let's Talk FPL Slack channel, get a few shout outs on stream, see the team reveals during the season and stuff like that, make sure you check out Patreon. There's a link in the description below. You can sign up now and get access to all the stuff that's on there straight away. And if you've got any other questions, of course, let me know. Otherwise, I will leave that video there. Make sure to leave me a comment below. Let me know what you thought of that. Are there any other players you're absolutely avoiding? Or are there any players that are on this list that you're actually putting into your team? Maybe there are. Let me know, and I'll catch you tomorrow for another video. Cheers all.